Welcome to episode 26 of the Goldenberg Destiny Project. In the previous episode, episode 25, we spoke about the last part of the period of the Judges, when the Jewish people were faced with the threat of the militaristic, powerful Philistines on one side, and the Ammonites on the other side, and other nations that could pose possible threats. And they came to Shmuel, and they said, please appoint a king for us like the other nations. We need a king. And Shmuel got very angry. And when we left, Shmuel was standing outraged. So now, in this episode, we're going to pick up over there. Why was Shmuel outraged? What did they do? They asked for a king. If in the Torah, by the bris with Avram, Hashem told him, you will have kings will come out of you. So he prophesied that there would be Jewish kings. And when Yaakov gave the bracha to the Shvatim, he said, Lo yosar shevet miYehuda, the scepter of kingship should not go away from Yehuda, that the Jewish king has to come from Yehuda. So we see already from centuries before that there was prophecy that the Jewish people would have a king. And here they came into Canaan, they conquered the land, they settled it. 400 years they're living there, and they have no king. And finally things are getting tight. The threats are getting greater. And they come to Shmuel and say, look, we want a king. So what did they do wrong? What's wrong with asking for a king? Why was he upset? So, and actually, it seems to be a mitzvah in the Torah. The Torah says, Kisov el haaretz, v'yirishta, v'yishavta ba, v'amarta osimu lai melech chal hagoyim, soim tosmu lach melech hashivcha Hashem b'kerev achecha. When you come into the land that God is giving to you, and you conquer it, and you settle it, I'm reading a little bit, if you don't mind, then you will say, let us appoint a king to rule over us, just like all the nations around us. You shall surely appoint for yourself a king, whom God your Lord shall choose. You shall appoint someone who is among your brothers. You may not appoint a stranger who is not your brother. So it's a mitzvah in the Torah. That's what it seems to be. So they came to Shmuel and they said, let us do the mitzvah. We want to do the mitzvah. Torah says you should have a king. So some commentators say that it's not a mitzvah. It's just a permitted option. If you come to God, if you come and say, we want to appoint us a king over all the, just as all the other nations have kings, we want to appoint a king, then you can appoint a king, but make sure he's one of you. You can't appoint a stranger. But it's really only a rishus. It's only permitted. It is not a mitzvah. So, but even that is a question, because apparently there was a prophecy that there would be kings. There were a couple of prophecies that there would be kings. So what's wrong with fulfilling those prophecies? What's wrong with that? So others say that it is a mitzvah. It is, but the problem is the way you ask. If you come and you say, I want to have a king like all the other nations, you're not asking a king for yourself. You want to be like the other nations. That's an improper way of asking. So that's what it's saying. If you ask improperly, then you should have a king, but you cannot have a stranger. So, but really, if you would ask properly, it would be a mitzvah. It is a mitzvah. The Torah is just phrasing it in this way. In case I think one of the commentators says, the Ramban says that it's a prophecy that they will ask improperly. But even without that, you can just say the Torah is addressing that possibility that people are going to come and ask improperly. Okay, you can ask improperly too. But really it's a mitzvah, but you should ask properly. So the question is, Barbanel says, if that's the problem, that you asked improperly, so why for 400 years did none of the great judges of Klal Yisrael, you had Osniel ben Knaz and Shimshon and Shmuel himself, why didn't they ask properly? 400 years he couldn't ask properly. So what exactly? So if you say the problem is if he Barbarbanel says that it's only a rishus, it's not a mitzvah. But most of the commentators say it's a mitzvah. So if it's a mitzvah, and the problem is you asked them properly, you should have asked properly. Now, so these are many questions here. Now, how does this work? And why was Shmuel angry? What did they do? What's the problem? So in order to address this, we have to talk a little bit about government. So for thousands of years, philosophers this is one of the major issues of philosophy, is to formulate the best form of government that will benefit the people. What is the best form of government? Going all the way back to Plato and Thomas More, and afterwards everyone's trying to figure out what is the best form of government. So let's just talk about this for a minute. It would seem that a monarchy is the best form. We're talking about what serves the people the best. What is most in the interest of the people? So a monarchy would be a good form of government. You have a person who is born into the royalty or has come to the royalty, and his whole mission is to take care of his country, to build it up, to make sure the economy is good, make sure it's safe, make sure it's secure. That is his mission in his kingship. And usually, when you have a royal dynasty, the first few kings are really good, because the first king that came in was like a great person. He was he was a warrior and a statesman, and he really. How do you become king? You gotta have something to you. How do you become, without getting very religious about it? But a person that becomes a king of France, how do you become king? You had to be a really powerful person. You had to be a leader. You had to be able to deal. So that type of a person comes in and he's king, and now he's going to rule the country. And usually they do a good job, and they bring up their sons from childhood. They bring them up with they carry the responsibility of taking care of the country. They're trained and educated from the earliest age, and to be that someday you will be king, and you have to know this, and you have to know that, and you bear a lot of responsibility, and then it works. And then it worked like two, three times, but eventually what happens is they become decadent and corrupt, and they're just used to they just fall into the kingship, and people take advantage of them, and they don't serve the people well. Instead of doing for their benefit, they exploit them and they oppress them, and eventually maybe they're overthrown. The next dynasty comes along. So, but that is monarchy. Monarchy is, it's basically it's a pretty good form of government if you could just keep it on path. And then another form of government is democracy. Now, democracy, you had the first democracy was in Greece. It was a direct democracy. That means that everybody in the country, the city-state, was able to vote. So any question you had, you called everybody together and they all voted, which is not a good system. It's going to be everybody's got problems, scream and yell, and all kinds of people, and it didn't work. And then you have, in the last few centuries, we had representative democracy, which means that people vote for a representative, and the representatives got to sit together in some kind of a governing body, if it's a Congress, and they vote. So you have a manageable number of people, and they are supposed to represent their people. But in order to be a member of Congress or a member of whatever body there is, the governing body, you have to be elected. And you're not elected for life, you're elected periodically. So what happens is that this opens up the door to tremendous corruption, because when you're running for office, people pay you, you're in the pockets of rich people, and it's just government, it's corrupt. It lends itself to corruption. And, unfortunately, there's a lot of corruption in government. We know that. And besides, another problem with democracy is that democracy is it's all directed at short-term goals, not at long-term goals. You become a member of Congress, let's say, and you want to be reelected. So therefore, the initiatives that you're going to support are going to have, results fairly soon, because then the people say, oh, look what he did for us, and they'll vote you back. But let's say you have to make a decision which will benefit the country 10, 15, 20 years from now, take the long view. You can't do that, because if you do that and you vote for something which right now maybe is not so comfortable, but in the long term is going to bring you a lot of benefit, you're going to be voted out of office. So you're not going to vote for that. So therefore, most of what you're going to vote on and you're going to approve and you're going to legislate are things that satisfy, short-term gratification. Long-term planning is not going to work. So that means that the democracy is the luxury of the rich, because the rich can maybe do this. But developing countries that need to make plans which are going to be long-range plans, they cannot have representative democracy, because nobody's gonna vote. So really, governments are very problematic in how they function and what they do, in corruption. In the end, all governments are corrupt. All governments are corrupt. It's not avoidable, especially if you get to a larger scale. If you do maybe have a government of a small town where it's all, everybody's like friends and family, then maybe you could have a government in that town which would serve the people and not be corrupt. When you're going to a national scale, and there's lots of power to be had and lots of money to be made, and plums to give away to your friends, it's going to be corrupt. It can't be avoided. The most you can hope for is to limit the corruption, but it will be corrupt. So what is the best form of government? So the best form of government is anarchy. What does anarchy mean? We spoke about this in the previous episode. Anarchy means no government. No government. The society should regulate itself. And this was attempted. This was attempted by different people. It's a utopia. Utopia means a good place. Utopia. U is good. Topos is place. Topos in Greek. Utopia means a good place. So how do you make a society which is a utopia, which is a good place? The best way would be if you could have anarchy. Anarchy, not chaos, anarchy. Now, if you could have no government and people are all, honorable and honest and ethical, and they all care about each other, then you could maybe have a society which doesn't need a government imposed on it, which could function by itself and by cooperation, by caring for each other. That would work. But if somehow you would make such a society, that in a short time people are greedy and people are ambitious and people will get into contention, and before you know it, anarchy becomes chaos. Anarchy is not synonymous with chaos. Anarchy means no government, but orderly, good society, but it descends into chaos. So how can you have a good government? How do you create a utopia, a society that's governed by, that runs in a good way? And so the answer is the Torah. The Torah provides the answer. The Torah, if you have a country, let's say Israel, all the Jewish people, If all the Jewish people would be united in their devotion to the Torah, in their recognition that they are here to be the painting that recognizes the painter, and that they have, as we spoke in the earlier episodes, and they all have a common mission. That's not like, well, I'm trying to do this business, I'm trying to do that business, I want such a house, such a house. Those are all secondary. You have one common mission, which is that as a totality, as a unit, as the entire nation united together, you will recognize God, and you will spend your time learning about my celebrations, understanding what God has done in this world, learning His Torah, doing His mitzvahs. If that is the focus of the nation, and then you can have a nation that functions without a government. You can have an anarchy without chaos. That's what you could have. And this is what they were trying to do during the period of the judges. What is the purpose of a Jewish king? We spoke before the king, what his job is. He is the chief executive of the country. He is the boss of the government. He runs the government. That's what his job is. The purpose of a king, a Jewish king, which the Torah wants, which God promised Avraham, which Yaakov gave his blessing to Yehuda, is not to be a chief executive. That is not his job. His job is to be the spiritual leader, to bring people. He's the king, he has ultimate authority over everybody. People are obligated to listen to him, they do listen to him, and his purpose is to bring people to the highest levels of Jewish observance, of Torah study, of closeness to God. That is the function of a Jewish king. And and you see this from the pasuk that I said before. When you come into the land and you conquer it and you settle it, then you should make a king. You would think that if you're going to have a king who's going to be a chief executive and will organize everything and give discipline and make sure things are functioning well, then you should use him for the conquest, and you should use him for the apportionment of the land, and you should use him for the settlement of the land. That's what he should do. That's what he should do. But no. The Torah says, after everything is done, then you should appoint a king, which tells you that the job of the king is not to be the chief executive, not to be a politician. That's not his job. That's not his job. The best example that I can give for what a Jewish king should be is a Hasidic Rebbe. I don't know how many are familiar with how Hasidic communities work. Let's take, I'm not going to give anybody specific, but a Hasidic Rebbe of a large Hasidic community. It means not 100 or 200 Hasidim, somebody who has, let's say, 10,000 families or 10,000 Hasidim. That's a large community. And he is the king of that community. Now, the community has many institutions. It has chesed institutions and all kinds of institutions that are there in the community. It has education, it has everything. And it's many, but whatever they do, they have job placements, and they have all kinds of institutions. The Rebbe is not involved. Those things are delegated to others. Now, they may come to the Rebbe if they have an issue or a question, or what should we do? They want his advice, they want his guidance. The Rebbe is supposed to handle these things. He's supposed to be able to give guidance, but he is not the one who's doing it. They're not doing it for him. His job is to be the Rebbe, to do the avodah, to bring people to have a tish, whatever goes on by a tish, to grow himself, to become close to God, to learn Torah, to say Torah. That is his job, to look up to him. This is the model. This is the example. This is what we should be. This is what he should be. This is what the Rebbe's job is. And this is now, he has authority. You cannot defy the Rebbe. If you defy the Rebbe, you're out. You're out of the community. So he has authority, and he can direct you more than any rabbi, any city rabbi or town rabbi or pulpit rabbi. He can. Those people, they're big people. I mean, most of them, and they have important jobs, and people respect them. But they are not. They have no authority over other people. They are just there to say, what does the Torah say? What does the halacha say? That's their job, maybe, to make takonos, things. But that is what their job is. The Rebbe is the king. He is the king of his community. And this is what it's. We will speak about Hasidim in many episodes in the future. And that is a whole discussion for itself, how it came about and how it functions. But this is a pretty modern phenomenon of the modern age. It's only a few hundred years old, and it's something extraordinary, but it exists, whether you are a chassid or not a chassid. But if you look at that model, you could see what a Jewish king is supposed to be. A Jewish king is supposed to be a person of the highest intellectual and moral stature, a person who's immersed in learning Torah, who's immersed in prayer, who's immersed in serving God, who is intelligent, aware of the world, fearless, wise, humble, and who loves the people. He loves God, he loves the people, he loves the land. These are the qualifications for a Jewish king. The qualifications are not that he's good with swordplay, or he knows how to lead a cavalry charge, or he knows how to make rules for the economy and how to control the money supply and trade agreements. That has nothing to do with him. Nothing. That is what he's supposed to do. Now, if the king comes in to a society that has a government, and he is going to have to be involved with the government, then inevitably his hands will become dirty. He will be involved with things that he should not be involved with. He should be pure and spiritual. This is very idealistic, true. It's very idealistic. But the Torah was trying to create a real utopia, an idealistic vision of society that would be on the highest level and would bring the creation to fruition. It would bring the Messianic age. It would be something beyond anything that we see in the world today. And the way this had to be done was that the period of the judges, a stable anarchy had to be established. An anarchy which would function, where the people would be inspired and they would be united and they would be deeply religious and devoted to God and devoted to His Torah and devoted to each other. Those people could reach that level on a national scale, that they could live together without having a government imposed on them. All they would need like committees, local committees, to take care of taking out the garbage. They would need a judiciary. Would have a system of courts. Of course, there was a judiciary. There was a Sanhedrin, and there were smaller Sanhedrins, and there were courts in every city. So there were courts, because the questions come up. What do? You have a civil dispute, so you have to resolve it. So you go to the court. A person, let's say, does a sin, and he has to be punished according to the Torah, which if you know the halacha, it's almost impossible that Bezdin should punish somebody, because he has to be warned within 2 seconds before, and he has to say, "I don't care." And then if he does it 3 seconds later, then you can punish him. But on the rare occasions that a person needed to be punished, then the courts could administer the punishment through court officers, and that's it. That's it. You don't need an army, and you don't need if there's a war, then all the people are united. They get together and they go fight. They're not a militaristic society. Most of the countries in the area were not militaristic societies. They were just farmers and bakers and carpenters who in the war they got together. They took their knives and their pitchforks and they went out into the battlefield to fight. You didn't need anybody to make a standing army. You didn't need this. So if you could have a stable anarchy, then that would be then a king could come in. Then a king could come in, and then he would not have to be involved with any kind of government issues. It would not be involved. It would nothing to do with them. He'd be completely devoted to the Torah and Avodah and serving God and helping people to the highest levels of the painting, recognizing the painter. That's what it would be. Unfortunately, they were not successful. They were not successful. They were not able to sustain that level of inspiration, and then and then next thing you're hanging out with the neighbors and the pagans who, as we've spoken in the previous episode, and next thing you know, they were joining them for Christmas dinner or who knows what, and that led to the disintegration of Jewish society, because what held them together, the glue that held them together, was a focused devotion to the Torah. And once you slipped out, then the society disintegrated. They were not united, and it led to chaos, and it made them vulnerable to all their neighbors. And then, so during the period of judges, so then a judge would come along, and he would speak to them and inspire them and bring them back to that level. Now, when you read the book of Shoftim, the book of Judges, most of what you read is bad stuff, because that's usually what the Torah tells you about. The Torah will say, this happened, then they threw out the invaders, and Shmonim Shana Shokta Oretz, the land was quiet for 80 years. What happened during these 80 years? The Torah doesn't, the prophet doesn't talk about it. What happened was a beautiful, beautiful Jewish life. People lived, and they brought families, and they had parnasa, they made livings, and they supported their families, and they learned Torah, and they did avodah, and they went to the Mishkan to bring korbanos, and they served God. It was a beautiful life for 80 years. But the Torah doesn't go into the script. It's understood in that one verse. The whole thing is there. 80 years was great, and then back down, and then it was like an Arbaim Shana Shoktar, another stretch of beautiful Jewish life. So it was cyclical. It was unstable. Sometimes it was great. Sometimes it was terrible. Sometimes it was great. Sometimes it was terrible. They were not able to get it to the point of stability, of this is what it is, and it works, and it's like that for hundreds of years. It works. They were not able to do that. And now they were at the end of the time of Shmuel. They're facing the Plishtim, facing that. This unity that comes from the inspiration and the zeal, and that's a very powerful weapon. That would help you be a very a very powerful element of defense against your enemies. But they didn't have it. It was weak. And how are we going to fight? The enemy is strong. The enemy is Plishtim, who are really powerful, and other enemies coming up. And how are we going to do this? We need to go another route. We need to go the route of a conventional king. We need a king kechol hagoyim. We need a king like all the other nations have. They have a king who runs the country, he runs the government, he organizes the army, he organizes the king takes the country and it whips it into shape and gives you discipline and gives you unity, but unity, forced unity, not organic unity. Unity coming from the top, and then this way the country will be strong enough to fight against his neighbors. That is what the elders came, the Zakanim came to Shmuel, and that is what they said. And Shmuel was outraged. He was very angry, because this is failure. This is failure. We keep trying. Keep trying. Eventually, you will be successful. Work harder. Pray more, daven more, learn more, inspire each other, be inspired. You're throwing up your hands in defeat. No, this is too much for us. We can't do this. We can't do this. It is a very high ideal, a very high ideal. It's not a simple thing to have an anarchy without chaos with a spiritual king. It is something else, yes, but go for it. Go for it. Why don't give up? Don't give up. No, they said. So I'll read to you. I'm going to read to you the psukim. There's no reason for me to paraphrase. I'm going to tell you the exact of what conversation that went on. So the people came to Shmuel, and they said to him, "You're old, and your sons do not follow your ways." They were not on his level. Shmuel was the greatest of the shoftim, the great judge, a prophet, a genius, who knew the Torah through and through. And the sons were not up to his level. Your sons do not follow in your ways. Appoint a king who will lead us, such as all the other nations have. They weren't asking for a Jewish king. They were asking for, as all the other nations have. And you see, when they asked for a king, God had to tell them, don't appoint a stranger. Appoint one of you. So why would they appoint a stranger, a non-Jew? You don't take Ish Nachri. Don't take somebody from you, because like we find in the Torah that Moav, they hired Balak to come be their king. They had like a free agent king came in. They hired him, do the job. You be the manager. So, that's a way to go. You're going to hire a king. You need a king to run your country. So look around and find who's got experience and talent and hire the guy. He may not be Jewish. So that's what he says. No. The mitzvah says you should take somebody from among you. But you see where they were going. They weren't looking for anything Jewish. They weren't looking for anything spiritual. They were looking for tachlis. They want a king who's going to do the job, who's going to run the country. That's what they want. So Shmuel was angry. He was angry. So he prayed to God, and God told him, listen to all that the people are saying to you. It's not you they've rejected. They've rejected me as their king. Who is the king? If the Torah runs the world, and people voluntarily accept on themselves the obligation to live by the Torah, and the Torah runs the world, then who is the king? God is the king. And if they don't want to have their society regulated by the Torah, that means they don't want God as the king. They want a different king. They want a regular king. So he says, they didn't reject you as a judge. They didn't they're rejecting me. I'm the king. So don't be so upset, Shmuel. You're upset. How about me? How about me? I'm rejected. He says, I'm the king, as it was from the day I brought you from Egypt. So, and you forsake me, and they served other gods, and that's what they're doing to you. Now listen. Listen to them. Listen to them. They want a king, listen to them. But warn them solemnly, and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights. Tell them, okay, you want a king? Fine. It comes at a price. Anarchy is beautiful. Besides, you have no government to contend with. But if you have a king, you have a government. What is the price? So Shmuel went, and he told them what God had said. I mean, the first pasuk doesn't say what he said, but the second pasuk says. So he went to the people and said, in the name of God, this is what the king who will reign over you will claim as his rights. He'll take your sons and put them in his army, and some he'll make serve him with his chariots, and his horses. Others he will appoint to run in front of his chariots. Some he will make commanders of thousands, commanders of 50s, and others he will put to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and still others to make weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his officials. He will take a tenth of your grain and of your vineyards and give it to his officials and his servants. He will take your male and female servants and the best of your cattle and donkeys and put them to work for him. He will take a tenth of your flocks, and you yourselves will become his slaves. When that day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you have chosen, but the Lord will not answer you on that day. This is what he told the people. This is what you want. You want corruption and abuse and exploitation and oppression? This is what you're opening yourself up to if you want a regular, conventional human king. But the people said, no, we want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles. So Shmuel heard what they said, and he reported to God, and God said, listen to them and give them a king. The period of the judges come to an end, and the period of the kings was about to begin. Thank you very much. I'd like to invite you to visit me at rabbireiman.com and explore all my works, both completed and still in progress, and kindly take the opportunity to lend your support on the participant page. Thank you very much, and be well.